Hello and welcome to another Friday afternoon hockey happy hour edition of Liberty Blue, where I'm going to walk you guys through a player evaluation. We're going to talk about one of the real interesting subject matters of the season so far, where we're going to break down a little bit of Keandre Miller's game based on the fact that he's going on IR today. It felt like a logical breaking point in terms of his schedule to have a block of games to evaluate. We're going to walk through a few different layers of this. We'll talk about it from the perspective of what he's done in the past, what's different this season. We'll go into the underlying numbers. We'll look at the NHL edge stats and see if anything jumps out. But I typically like to do these in real time. If I pre-record this and I go in with a pre-existing notion and then chop it up and edit it doesn't have the same kind of effect as when I walk through it and do a live evaluation. The one I did in June for Truba, the one I did in July for Ryan Lindgren, those in particular, they captured me working through my ideas. And I typically find that to be more instructive in these types of projects because I don't want to let what I think about a player influence how I do these evaluations, what types of criteria I use to evaluate. So we'll walk through the typical way we do this. We typically start with context. We'll talk about line mates. We'll talk about quality of competition, ice time, responsibility and role. Are they getting defensive allocated minutes? Are they getting offensive allocated minutes? What their skill set would naturally lend themselves to being good at. We'll talk about playoff performance. We'll dive a little bit into the counting stats. We'll look a little bit at the underlying numbers. We'll talk scoring chances, expected goals, high danger stuff. We'll talk about the NHL edge stats to see whether or not maybe his skating is a little bit different. I don't want to say a small army, but there are a lot more resources for people like me who do this for fun and do this chasing optimism, chasing a dream, to be able to evaluate this stuff more than just the tape. Because as much as I could easily cut up some highlights and walk you through some of these decision making things, a lot of those are individual sequences. They're really challenging as far as picking out what's a trend versus what's one individual play. And hang on, I just want to bump the links one last time. Talking K. Andre Miller. So, with the news that Miller's going on LTIR, that does mean he's going to be out for, I believe it's 24 days or 10 games, which that's a non-insignificant amount of time when you are struggling as mightily as the Rangers are this season. And make no bones about it, Miller has been part of that struggle. The Rangers have had a very specific vision of what they think Keandre Miller can be. And a lot of their selection of him, their curation of him, their development of him has been rooted in the idea of what he could be. Remember, this is somebody who did not have a significant amateur profile at the defensive position, somebody who played defense 2 years in college, kind of hit a late growth spurt, and Wisconsin saw the vision of, well, if he gets up to 6'4", he's got the long reach, he's got good skating. It's simply a matter of, can he put it all together? And for me, I'm an early adapter. I've had that Keandre Miller Wisconsin jersey since pre-pandemic. I have been an early adapter. I really saw the vision. It was the type of draft pick that I am happy the Rangers made at the time, because you don't want to be drafting for safety. You don't want to be drafting for need. When we did the big deep dive last week talking about Jacob Trouba, it was rooted in the idea that the Rangers made a bunch of decisions in rapid succession trying to find defensemen to be able to fill a need, because they turned over a lot of their group in that one offseason. You had Pionk, you had Brady Shea. Eventually they get rid of Shea in the same offseason. But the Rangers found guys they like. And I think this is a natural starting point for talking about our evaluation of Keandre Miller. Tall, fast, good puck skills, not great puck skills, confidence, puck IQ, positional IQ, hockey IQ. That's where you start to lose it and it starts to break down. And Miller, very much like Zibanejad, is a player who flows off of his confidence. If Miller is not feeling his game, he looks lost out there. And being that he was subjected to playing with Jacob Trouba so much over the last 4 seasons, it's not exactly a coincidence to see him struggle with certain components of the game. So much of defense in the NHL is about communication and positioning, knowing that if I am in one spot, my partner is going to go here. If my partner is there, I need to be here. And for 4 years, Trouba and Miller played together, one of the most commonly used defensive pairs in the entire NHL over an extended period of time. We're talking dating back to that 56 game 2021 season under David Quinn. That was the first time they were put together. And ever since, they've been more or less inseparable. So we're going to start this evaluation going all the way back to the beginning. We are going to go all the way back to 2021, and we are going to start with just who he played with, because this is the first starting point. I'm going to share my screen. Line combinations, cool. If you were here last week when Trouba got traded, you'll know this website's very useful. But that first year, this is 2020, 2021, the 56 game season. Most common partner. This is all situations. We'll bump that down to even strength. I'm not sure if Miller was killing penalties. I don't think he was, but yeah. 549 minutes with Jacob Trouba, 210 minutes with Brendan Smith, 109 minutes with Adam Fox. This is going on ostensibly 4 NHL seasons ago. All three, I should say, the first two positive goal differentials at 5-on-5, 24-16, 15-9. Scoring chances, close, but winning. Scoring chances, close, but losing. No, excuse me, this is shots. These are scoring chances. Losing scoring chances, losing scoring chances, losing scoring chances. Winning shots, losing shots, losing shots, excuse me. So that tells me, number one, that in the Trouba Miller minutes, they're being outpossessed, because when you see a disparity to this degree between scoring chances and shots on goal, that tells you the other team has the puck a lot. Now, when you have, a 203 difference between chances and shots for, that tells you that the other team, they have the puck a lot. They're not getting it on the net, but they're definitely maintaining offensive zone time, and they're going to start to wear you down. And I do think that's a pretty emblematic starting point of this Trouba Miller marriage for the last 3.5 seasons. So we'll go to the next season, 21-22, the first year under Gerard Gallant. I want to make sure it stays with Miller. Yes, it does. The lion's share, over 1,000 minutes at even strength together, 1,300 minutes at 5-on-5, 2021-2022. They win the goals. They win the goals battle. They lose the scoring chances battle. They're very close on the scoring chances battle. They lose the shots for and against battle. These are workable numbers. If you are thinking about K'Andre Miller, I'm rubbing something out of my eye. If you're thinking about K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba and what their responsibilities were over the last handful of seasons, they traditionally got the matchup minutes. They were playing against the other team's best players because they were most commonly being deployed with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well, as far as what forwards Miller was most often deployed with. But if you are ostensibly the defensive pair, where you're out there with your team's best defensive forwards to kind of tamp the game down, close it down, it makes sense that your numbers are going to be a little more close to even. And these aren't disqualifying. These aren't in the low 40s. If you're 47.5 to 50% as the matchup defensive pair, those are reasonably workable numbers. But this is where you can start to, I don't want to say pick it apart, but this is the first time K'Andre Miller plays in the playoffs. And in the 350 some odd minutes, they are below, well below where you need to be. 43% of the shots on goal, 45% of the scoring chances. And that's that first playoff run where they go to the conference final and lose to Tampa Bay. So after that, the Rangers come back, and we all know what happens in 22-23. Well, again, lion's share, over 1,000 minutes at 5-on-5 with Jacob Trouba. They lose the goal split. They win the shot split. They win the scoring chance split. So first time they have it the inverse, where they lose the goal split. But again, -1 is not overly disqualifying. That is not egregious. That is not something that would disqualify you from being considered serious. You have decent possession numbers. You probably didn't get great goaltending to some degree. We'll talk about that as well. Then, for argument's sake, let's just do this, because I have not looked at these numbers ahead of time, but yeah, that sounds about right. 42% of the shots, 43% of the scoring chances in that one first round series against the Devils 2 years ago. 106 minutes, 1-1, goals for, goals against, but heavily outplayed, outpossessed. Next, we go to last season, the season the Rangers win the President's Trophy. Wait, no, This is not right. That's the playoffs. That's why we want regular season. I was going to say that did not look right. Here we go. Again, over 1,000 minutes together, 74% of Keandre Miller's 5-on-5 ice time. They lose the goal split again. They win the scoring chance split. They win the shot split. They win the scoring chance split. Very similar to the year before. Oh, I'm stupid. Excuse me. I am sorry. I hit the wrong thing. There we go. Still over 1,000 minutes, 64%. They lose the goal split. They lose the shot split. They lose the scoring chance split. This is the third straight year now where they lose the scoring chance. Excuse me. 2 of the 3 years, they lose the shot split and the scoring chance split. They lose the goal split 2 of the 3 years as well. That should tell you that this pair, at least in the regular season, is fine. But this is where it falls apart for me. This is where it falls apart for me. When you see Trouba and Miller together in the postseason, 46%, 44%, 43% of the scoring chances when he's deployed with Schneider, 40% of the shots for. All of this is to say, and we can stop sharing that and I'll come back up full screen. All of that is to say, you have almost 5,000 minutes of Jacob Trouba and Keandre Miller data to sift through. And we haven't even gotten really into the nitty gritty of it yet. It's just when you have this much information and you're trying to discern out, well, who's good in this pair and who isn't, there's a lot that goes into that. And look, I make no bones about it. I've been pretty anti-Trouba since 2022, I would say. I was inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt in 1920 and 21 when the team wasn't that good. But the playoffs in 21-22 against Pittsburgh, Carolina, subsequently Tampa Bay, the year after against the Devils, the possession metrics aren't egregiously bad for the Miller Trouba pair, but they are bad enough that they were worth considering. Maybe we could do something better than this. But the next component of this, in talking about responsibilities, context, is of course quality of competition. And I am, of course, going over to Puck IQ, which very useful tool, something that I highly encourage you to take the time to look into, because this is something that we can have really good conversations using. Let me see how big that looks. That does look a little small. Make that a smidge bigger. So this scatter plot charts dangerous Fenwick, which is just a fancy way of saying good scoring chances, and then up and down. The further vertical someone is, the more their ice time is against lower quality players. The further they are down, the more quality of competition they are getting. And now you'll see this season, Keandre Miller is playing the lowest quality of competition of his entire NHL career so far, and he's relatively not that much better. You know, a rookie this tier, not a lot of competition against quality opponents. That playing the most of his, it's baffling when you look at some of these numbers, because you're asking yourself, they were asking a rookie with 2 years of college hockey experience to go in and play 36% of the minutes against good opponents. And they won those minutes, you know, the 51% dangerous Fenwick in those minutes. That should tell you something. That is interesting. But you go to this year, the Rangers have Keandre Miller playing a bulk of his ice time against meh competition. Middle competition is qualified as second and third liners. Elite is first liners, and grit intensity is fourth liners. Excuse me. But when you look and you see the quality of competition split, where it's 34, 33, 32, 32, 34, 32, 32, 38, that's a lot bigger, a lot less time against lower quality competition. You go back to that first year, 36, 31, 32, and then 23, 24 last year. The lion's share of their 5-on-5 minutes in the regular season played against middle opponents. And that's something that's interesting, because that tells us, well, if they're out there in that situation, what are they being asked to do? If you are out there with Miller, Trouba, Zibanejad, Kreider, and last year, Blake Wheeler, Kakko, various guys over the course of the season, what does that tell you about your expectations? What are they asking you to do? And I think it's fair to say that those guys were tasked with trying to keep the game under control. And keeping the game under control, there's a few ways you can do that. The most obvious way is offensive zone time. If you can stay in the offensive zone for prolonged periods of time and start to wear down competition, and I do want to get to some of the structural stuff because I do think that's interesting. And I do have a comment in the stream to talk about because this is one of the examples of something I talked about on the episode last week, the clip that did actually pretty well on Instagram and TikTok. But the Rangers acquired talented players, Trouba, Miller, Fox, and didn't have the most straightforward path for them. You could say the same thing of Kevin Shattenkirk, of Tony DeAngelo. All of these defensemen, Brendan Smith comes to mind as well. All of these defensemen they've acquired in the post 2015 window of trying to recapture that pre losing to Tampa Bay in 2015 magic. When you think about it, all of those guys on an individual level had success in other places. DeAngelo was a bit of a projection. He was a reasonably touted prospect. Tampa Bay and Arizona both gave up on him within 2 years, but players who had potential or were successful, Kevin Shattenkirk has really good numbers for the bulk of his career. St. Louis, Colorado, the 1 year in Washington before coming to the Rangers. You can keep adding it on and on and on. And then you start to come back to a recurring theme of, well, if these guys are all good in other places and they come to the Rangers, and Adam Fox, outlier, very different developmental trajectory than some of these other guys, Fox, multiple years of college. And I do think that's worth discussing as well. The simple fact is that the Rangers aren't great at churning guys into NHL caliber players. When you look at their defensemen right now, Adam Fox was in college for several years. Ryan Lindgren was at U of M and the AHL for a number of years. And U of M, Minnesota, not Michigan. Got to get that right. That will upset people. They play for a jug for a reason. K'Andre Miller, 2 years at Wisconsin. Braden Schneider, outlier. Somebody who did a little bit of time in the A and then was up and has been up ever since. Zach Jones, a couple years at UMass, some time in the A. These are guys who are spending their most pivotal developmental years in college. And I do think there is something to that. I am curious, and it's something I want to investigate, but I'm not exactly sure what the thread I would go through of trying to deduce whether or not playing college versus major junior has a discernible impact in the quality of player you turn out to be, especially as a defenseman. Where college hockey, it's not as fluid, it's not as high scoring, and generally speaking, it's a slower paced game than what you see in a lot of the competitive major junior leagues in Canada or in the men's leagues over in Europe, because the quality of player is lower. The average college hockey player is not playing professional hockey after they finish college. The bottom half of a lot of those rosters are not guys who have paths forward to competitive, major, serious careers. Sure, there are guys who go play in Europe. There are guys who ride the bus in the E or the A, but the lion's share of the serious hockey players are playing in the major leagues up in Canada or in the USHL down here, or they're playing over in Europe. And those guys, the game is faster, the competition is better. So I am curious, and it's something I do want to look into a little bit more before we continue this conversation about Miller. I do think that's something I want to investigate. I will add it to the recurring list. There are quite a few post-it notes on my screen. Next up, after talking about quality of competition, after talking about ice time, we also have to talk about, of course, how often he gets used, number one. And then number two, we have to talk about who he gets played with up front. So I'm going to share my screen again. Oh, wait, no, that's forwards. I want defense. Here's defense. Okay. So we're going to share my screen again, and we're going to start with this season. Now, this website's a little bit funky as far as sizing, so I'm going to do my best to make this look okay. I know it doesn't look great over on your screen, but so you can see here, Fox is first, Miller second most used, Ryan Lindgren third most used, Trouba fourth most, Schneider fifth most, Zach Jones sixth most, Mancini seventh most. So this is just this season that we're in right now. We will go, and I got to make this the right size again. We will go to last year, and we will do this same exercise each of the 3 seasons. When you look, Fox most used, Miller second most used, Lindgren second, third most used, Trouba, Schneider, Zach Jones, the great Chad Ruhwedel, Eric Gustafson, who I know the Rangers would like to have right now, obviously. Would be very nice to have an extra quality NHL defenseman in the mix, but this is the other thing I wanted to touch on here. Where is it? I always forget where it is. Down here. Okay. So if you're looking at this chart, this visual, I should say, it might be a little bit confusing to understand. We want to talk about who Keandre Miller plays with. So we go by the colors. Blue means less, red means more. Keandre Miller, blue, the Rangers' best scoring line. Keandre Miller, red, Zibanejad, Kreider, Vesey, Gaudreau, Tyler Pitlick, Jack Roslovic, Capo Caco. Wheeler, Brodzinski, Nick Bonino, light blue and white. Miller not getting a whole lot of run with the big boys. You know, that Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line was one of the best scoring lines in the entire NHL last year. And they did that playing with Adam Fox, who's in red with those guys, with Ryan Lindgren, and with Eric Gustafson, who, if you'll recall, filled in very nicely for Adam Fox the first few weeks of last season when Fox got hurt in that game against Carolina. But as far as the big picture, as far as understanding his game, I do think there is something to be said for the simple fact that the Rangers as a whole this season have regressed. I don't think that's just a Keandre Miller thing. I do think the Rangers at large have real issues that have kind of lingered over the last few years and have frankly made it, I don't want to say undoable, but on some level have made it where they're really going to struggle. It's made it where the team as a whole basically can't dig itself out of this hole. So the next thing up I want to talk about, and this is one of my pet projects. This is one of my favorite things to talk about in hockey is transition play, because transition play is not something people who don't know what they're talking about can BS, because there's no magic number. There's no, oh, but this person said. It is, you track the game yourself or you subscribe to somebody else who tracks the games manually. So I'm going to share my screen in a minute and we're going to look at some of Keandre Miller's transition stats over the last 3 years and see if anything jumps out. Okay, so I want to jump in here and read some of these comments because I do think these are interesting. So Eddie says Lavi needs to change up the defensive structure. They play too much man and start playing his own system. The defense is just one of the problems. The 5-on-5. I agree with you. The problem is this is the NHL. This is not football, and this is not baseball where teams break their tendencies. I completely agree with you. In an ideal world, you would want to minimize their defensive risks. You would want these guys to pass off, to share responsibility, to utilize zone stuff down low. It would help a lot as far as the communication breakdowns they have in and around the net front of I'm going, as in I'm going to get the puck, or I'm staying, as in terms of I'm staying at the net front. Michael asks, if they trade Miller without receiving a defenseman in return, who replaces Miller from within the system? They don't have anyone who's ready. If Matthew Robertson was ready, he would have been up here at some point playing in the last few weeks. Connor Mackey is supposed to play their next game up, and if Matthew Robertson were ready, at some point in the last 2 years, he would have gotten a look because the Rangers have been desperately and frantically trying to get another defenseman in-house that's cheap as a replacement, because they do have a really serious Miller question they're going to need to ask after the season. Drew Fortescue is probably at least another year, if not 2 away from participating in the NHL. I know he was a draft pick recently. I know there's connections to Drury. I think he plays with Drury's kid or something like that, but I don't think they have an in-house solution. I don't think you would see them trade Miller unless they could get a defenseman in return or they could get something they could flip again. I just don't see a world where they would do that, because I know Miller is struggling mightily this year, but he plays a lot of minutes, and with no Trouba, he's one of the guys that I know Laviolette kind of has more implicit trust in than, say, Zach Jones or Chad Ruhwedel or Connor Mackey or Victor Mancini. You know, they don't want Victor Mancini killing penalties. They really don't want Zach Jones killing penalties. They don't want Connor Mackey killing penalties. You know, it's going to be a lot of work for Adam Fox, for Ryan Lindgren, for Miller, and I would imagine for and for Braden Schneider. I couldn't think of Schneider's name for a second there. And then Eddie asked, Rangers need to look at Savard or Matheson, Sherratt from Detroit, Provorov from Columbus. I've heard Provorov. He plays a lot of minutes. I don't think he's particularly efficient. I don't think he's a top 4 guy on a cup team, and he makes a lot of money. I think he's an expiring contract, but we could talk replacements towards the end. They are not good at 5-on-5. They don't spend enough time in the ozone. Yep, it's one of their biggest issues. Dallas, cheers from Calgary. Appreciate it, brother. All right, let's get on into the transition stats, because this is where I can really kind of illuminate what I think about Miller's game. So we want to share, where is it? Here we go. Okay. So looking at this scatter plot, this is shots and passes, scoring chances, rush versus forecheck, zone exits. This is what we want to start with. Zone exits. So if you are in the defensive zone as a defenseman, you are in your defensive zone, you have possession of the puck. How easily do you get the puck from defense to offense? We talk about this incessantly. This is the life's blood of the modern NHL. If you cannot play in transition and get there quickly, you are not as efficient of a team as you possibly can. You are wasting energy, you are wasting time. You look at this scatter plot for last season. The data for this year is not out for every team yet. Corey Schneider, who does a tremendous job doing this project, it's one of the most useful Patreons to subscribe to. I cannot encourage you enough to support people like Corey who do invaluable work to enrich the content that people like me do. So when you look at this chart, you see a very clear picture. The only defenseman on the Rangers last year who created more exits with possession per 60 than league average was Adam Fox. That tracks. You see here, clears per 60, meaning the alley-oop, the long pass that goes through the air, the rim out along the boards, or off the glass and out. That was the way the Rangers got from defense to offense quickly last year. You look, you see Trouba, you see Gus, you see Lindgren, you see Schneider, you see Jones, you see Miller. It makes sense to some degree that you see guys who played together on opposite ends of the spectrum to some degree. You know, Fox is further top right and Ryan Lindgren is to his bottom left because they functionally carry out different traits. I know Fox is to the right and the top right, and that's generally what we would consider good. You know, this is probably Quinn Hughes. Yeah, that's Quinn Hughes. This is probably Jake Sanderson. Yeah. Calgary, Rasmus Anderson, Mackenzie Weegar. That makes sense. This is Dahlin. Yeah. That's Miro. That's Braden Peichel. That's very funny to see. Zadorov, Noah Juleson. Who's the fly? Sean Walker, Jake Wallman. You know, these are good defensemen on this end. So clearing the puck only is not like disqualifying from being functional or being good. You know, Rasmus Dahlin would probably be the best defenseman on the Rangers based on his performance this season, not based on his career. Obviously, Adam Fox is better. But when the Rangers are living like this, where you just did all of that work in the defensive zone to win a loose puck, to create possession, to only clear it out as opposed to exiting with possession, that's a waste. You wasted all of that energy just to not even establish possession again. It's the same thing with dump and chase hockey. So we can compare that to, let's say, 2 years ago, the year they lose to the Devils in the first round once this refreshes. You see clears per 60. It's very funny. Hayek's here. He didn't play a lot that year. I want to say Hayek only had maybe 15 games in 22-23. So I do want to fact check that to be sure. But 22-23. Yeah, he played 16 games that season. I do want to be accurate as far as the information I'm giving. So Fox, the only player above average, yeah, Ryan Lindgren slightly above average for exits with possession per 60. Zach Jones below, everybody else below. Ben Harper down here with the Nikita Zaitsevs and Jack Johnsons of the world. No, I was not exaggerating when I said Ben Harper was the worst defenseman I had seen on the Rangers in a long time 2 years ago. But again, you see Miller here, below average rate of clears and of exits with possession. That tells you him and Trouba are in their own end a lot. And then we'll go all the way back. The oldest data we have, you'll see Miller's here. More clears, close to average exits with possession. Trouba, the only time in the 3-year sample we have access to, he's above average in exits with possession. Next up, the exits by type. This is something that is useful. This is something that'll tell you how you get from point A to point B. So Ryan Lindgren carries the puck out. Adam Fox passes it out. Jacob Trouba passes it out. Eric Gustafson doesn't do a whole lot of either. Zach Jones does not do a whole lot of either. K'Andre Miller skates it out. Schneider skates it out. And in your head, that tracks to some degree. Lindgren being here is a bit interesting in my opinion. I don't think of him much as a puck carrier. I think of him a lot more as a retriever. You know, I would expect Adam Fox to be over here. But it does make sense in the sense that Lindgren is probably faster in a straight line than Adam Fox, who's much more adept at moving the puck than skating the puck. And that makes sense that Trouba's here, you know, not the most fleet of foot as far as his skating speed. So somebody who's going to pass it out of the zone makes more sense. We'll talk about retrievals. This is where we can talk a little bit. Oh, no, not Edmonton. I'm so used to doing Oilers stuff. So this is. Oh, they do have some games logged for this year. Okay. I want to talk about it in the context of years prior because it's an entire season's worth of data as opposed to the first 20. Miller is here ish, right? Yeah, Miller's here. This way is bad. Botched retrievals, failed exits. That means you got the puck and you lost it, or you had the puck and it got taken away. Up. Retrievals leading to exits, meaning you went back and got the puck, and then because you went back and got it, the team was able to transition from defense to offense. When you look at this, Fox, retrievals leading to exits. Schneider, Trouba, Lindgren, all of that makes sense because in your brain, Adam Fox is the one who's going back and getting the puck. He also breaks it out, and on occasion, Ryan Lindgren breaks it out. Same deal. Them playing together, playing and having the luxury of playing with Artemi Panarin, Lafreniere, and Trocheck last year. It makes sense that these guys have the easier entries, exits rather, and they have the better numbers. Those guys they play with on offense are better in transition. You see Schneider here, Trouba here, K'Andre Miller's down here. Retrievals leading to exits 8.52, botched retrievals 4.73. Those are both below average. Functionally, you would expect somebody like Miller, who has puck skills and who's a good skater, to be up here because these are where the busts are. This is probably Charlie McAvoy. This is probably Spencer Stats. I have no idea who that is. This is Noah Hannafin. That makes sense. Dante Fabro, Shea Theodore, Miro, Seth Jones, who had a nice year, Hughes, Sanderson, Hedman, yeah, Letang, Erik Karlsson, yeah. This is where you want to be, that top right corner where you get the puck out a lot and you do it efficiently. It doesn't take you 2 or 3 tries to break the puck out. Is there anything else on all 3 zones worth talking about? I think we're good over here. So we'll come back up full screen again. So getting the full picture as far as Miller. I do think Miller has always been a projection, a forecast, as opposed to, say, a sure thing. I think the traits are tremendous. I think we all see his size. I think we all see his skating ability. And we get frustrated that he's not able to put it all together with any real frequency or consistency. It's really befuddling at times to see how inefficient he is at using his traits. We all want to see him clobber people because he's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he doesn't use it. And I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to pull up the NHL Edge stats, which, if you're not familiar how they do these, where is it? No, I don't want to share Evolving Hockey yet. God, this website is so inefficient. There it is. Okay. This is the NHL Edge website. This is for this season. So if you're looking at this, these numbers are percentiles. So if you were thinking about a standard distribution, which has a bell curve where it's flat to the top, the mean is the dead middle, and it comes back down and all the way over. 96th percentile is elite skating speed. I have to work out the math for percentiles to the number of players in the NHL, but I could tell you down to like the decimal point what percentile would put you in terms of skate speed. But Miller's a strong skater. He's got high end speed, bursts over 20 miles an hour, covers an above average amount of distance, lots of shots on goal, poor shooting percentage. Then when you look at the skating, 76% above 20, 76th percentile above 22 burst 1. It's by position, so it makes sense that he's only got one of these because he's not going to get a lot of opportunities to build up that much speed in a straight line. High end speed, and then strength, blah, blah, blah. And then in comparison, we'll go to the year prior. If this will load cleanly, this website's definitely a little bit clunky because it's an NHL affiliated product. Last year, a little bit lower. This is higher. These two are lower. We can go to the year before that and we can compare it to the year they lost to the Devils. This is significantly lower. This is significantly lower. This is higher. Again, you are starting to get a picture. You are starting to get an understanding of the tools, of the traits, and to see a guy have a discernible jump. We're at 76th percentile, 68th percentile. This is 2 years ago. Now we're talking about elite speed for his position group, 94th and 96th percentile of speed of skating. That's really high-end talent. That is really, really high end skating talent. And the Rangers have not found a way to channel that into an effective player because the game isn't where it needs to be. So I can stop sharing the NHL Edge website. Then we can look over at Natural Stat Trick, which I just have to pull up K'Andre Miller's page. Okay. Now we share this screen. Okay. So this is Natural Stat Trick. This is going to tell you underlying numbers. So chances, Fenwick chances, shots for and against, goals for and against, expected goals for, shots, shots against, going all the way down, high danger chances, on ice shooting, on ice save. I'll explain that when we get there. So just starting with the raw counting stats, and we're going to go to rate because, obviously he hasn't played nearly as many minutes this year as years prior. So we do have to get the common denominator, but better in chances than last year, worse in goals than last year, better in expected goals, worse in high danger chances, better on ice shooting, worse on ice save. So that's first point. That is the first point we need to make. Yes, he is losing his minutes this year so far. He's losing them a little bit more than he did last year. Not a huge drop off, about 2 goals for percentage wise. And that's about what we're looking at here, about 2% on ice save. So I would tell you, number one, that he probably didn't play as good last year as we all kind of perceived him to as. And then number two, it would tell you that the minutes that he's playing this year, the goaltending, it's having a harder time. And then out of curiosity, I want to scale this out for REITs where we get our common denominator and we try and see. So higher rate of chances for, lower rate of chances against. That's good. Higher rate of shots, not a significant one, but a higher rate of shots. Lower rate of shots against. Goals for, higher rate of goals for, lower rate of goals against. Excuse me, I toggled this. There we go. That's what I was looking at. Because the bold is always the most recent, the active season. 2.56, that's more than this year. The problem here is the goals against is significantly higher. The expected goals per 60 is about 0.2. So this jump is a bit much. You would expect for if the expected goal jump is about 3, it's 0.29. If it's the 0.3, you would expect this to be closer to like this number here to be like 3.05, 3.1. But that's a little bit high, and I do think, as we talked about before, that's a shooting and save percentage thing more than anything else. I think the fact that the Zibanejad-Kreider duo has really struggled this year and is not playing their best hockey and is not playing great defense, definitely weighing on K'Andre Miller as well. But the big picture and the main reason I wanted to do this today, when a guy's going to miss games for injury time, it presents an opportunity to reset. As somebody who covers the Oilers, who does a lot of Oilers content as well, Zach Hyman wasn't playing well before he missed the 2 weeks he did with the lower body injury. He came back. He scored 2 goals in his first game back. He's playing a lot more like himself. I know K'Andre Miller feels a ton of pressure on himself right now as far as helping the team and knowing that he needs a contract after this season. And with every mistake, he's costing himself money in that negotiating room. And I think Miller is almost a finished product. And I don't necessarily mean what he's doing right now is what he is, but at his age, I don't think you are going to get a discernibly bigger jump in any traits. This is kind of what he is. He's got close to the peak he's going to have in terms of his physical abilities. We saw the massive jump in skating speed over the last 2 seasons. That tells you that he's getting close to his physical ability prime. But if he's not using it, if he just stays potential that needs to be cashed in, that's not really something the Rangers are going to be able to capitalize on. At a certain point, potential can't be capitalized anymore. There's a point of no return, of Rubicon in a player's development where unless something dramatically changes, like team, you're not going to be able to coax significantly different performance out of them. And I think Miller will be better when he comes back because I think the team will be a little bit more stable. He won't be playing with somebody who doesn't want to be there in Trouba like he was right leading up to Trouba getting traded. But right now, it feels like Miller is on shaky ground. And I have always said and felt that he's been their X factor as far as swinging playoff series. If you go back and you watch the series preview episodes against Tampa Bay not Tampa Bay, excuse me, Florida in the conference final, if you talk about the series against the Devils, every team that wins the Stanley Cup has that great third defenseman. He doesn't play on their first pair, but when he is out there, he is able to tamp the temperature of the game down and do it at a very high level. You think about what Byram was able to do, what Samuel Girard were able to do for Colorado. You think about what Ryan McDonough was able to do for Tampa Bay. Those types of guys are invaluable. And I think the Rangers think Miller can do that. At 24, he is not done as far as figuring out what he's going to be as a player, but he's close. And at a certain point, the Rangers do need to make a decision. Do we think there is more to come, or do we know what he is? Because if we know definitively what he is, we can set a fair market value for him where we don't feel like we're going to get taken advantage of. And coming into this year, I didn't think there was a world where we would be talking seriously about maybe giving Miller a change of scenery, maybe trying to do a hockey trade. And instead, I've come around to the idea of potentially trading him, not because he's going to be too expensive after the season to give a contract to, but because frankly, the Rangers can't capitalize on his talent. And I think it's very emblematic of larger organizational issues that they consistently identify guys who are talented, but can't really put them in a position to succeed. You know, Miller has a lot of games played for somebody at his age. I want to say it's I want to say he's got 320 career NHL games. I'm curious what he is. He's 2018 draft. I want to see what he is in terms of games played in his class. He's got to be relatively close to the top. Yeah, he's in the top 10. Brady Kachuk, Dahlin, 3, Svechnikov, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, he's 8th at 322 games. Dobson, Farabee, Quinn Hughes, Kotkaniemi, Svechnikov, Dahlin, and Kachuk are the only ones ahead of him. He's in the same group. I mean, this is a good draft class if you're looking at it in hindsight. You look at Dahlin is great, and like even if you want to argue who behind K'Andre Miller did you want the Rangers to take? There's nobody that jumps off the screen there, and that's not really the point, neither here nor there. That was at a point in time where the Rangers were just throwing shit at the wall, where they were drafting 2-3 defensemen every draft, and in the mindset of we're going to find 6 that we like. We're going to trade for Adam Fox. We're going to trade for True, but we're going to find 3 to 4 new guys we like. We're going to supplement that with Trouba, with Adam Fox. We're going to get Ryan Lindgren in the Rick Nash trade. We're going to draft Nils Lundqvist. We're going to draft Zach Jones. We're going to draft K'Andre Miller. We're going to find 6 guys we like. And I think it bears worthy considering the fact that the Rangers have had in the past tense, referring to past seasons, a young defensive core. You know, you think about Miller, Fox, Lindgren, Schneider. Those guys are all pretty young. And then you compare that to Florida, who won the Cup last year. All their D are in their late 20s or 30s. You think about the Vegas team 2 years ago, a lot of guys in their late 20s, early 30s. Tampa Bay, of course. Colorado, a little bit on the younger side. That's probably a bit of an outlier. That's one I'll have to investigate. That's something I definitely want to look into ahead of next week's episode. But this is an opportunity for Miller to mentally reset. This whole team needs a reset. And unfortunately, we can't pause the season for a few weeks. But for Miller on an individual level, there's an opportunity to get his mind right because right now he is not playing decisively. And you can see, and this is one of the real telltale signs of a player who's struggling with his confidence is if you watching the game, especially on TV, in person, it's a little bit faster. So it's a little different. But if you're watching on TV and you can visualize the player making the decision as they do it of like, look up, left, right, go, that's too slow. And when you are overthinking it and you are not playing instinctually within your structure, that's where the game starts to break down for you. And that's so clearly what's happening to Miller here. I want the Rangers to tell Miller to keep it simple. Use your stride, make plays, skate the puck out of danger. If you're playing with Adam Fox, get it to him, let him find the open guys. If you're Keandre Miller, use your size, use your reach, prevent deep offense from happening in the neutral zone. Don't wait till the defensive zone. And they do have to figure some things out. No Miller for a few weeks, Connor Mackey in. Maybe we see Matthew Robertson, but like that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. I don't know what the plan is here. Maybe they claim a defenseman off of waivers if anybody interesting ends up there. Because right now they need bodies, and it's hard to stop the bleeding of a challenging season when you don't have a healthy lineup. It'd be one thing if they were fully healthy and still struggling, but right now, every win is important, and beating Buffalo on Wednesday does not quell those concerns. If you couldn't beat Buffalo, we might as well have just packed it up for the season. But as far as going forward, this schedule, you got the Kings tomorrow, you got the Blues, you got the Predators. The Kings are pretty good. They're on a nice run of form, but you need to handle your business against the Blues. You need to play well against Nashville, who is not a good team, because after that, you have Dallas, Carolina, the Devils, the Lightning, the Panthers, the Bruins, the Capitals. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games against teams that are in playoff spots right now or teams that were in the playoffs last year. I don't think the Bruins are in a playoff spot. Oh, they are in a playoff spot right now in the Atlantic. Excuse me. All 6 of their games after the games against St. Louis and Nashville are against playoff teams. The Kings are a playoff team from last year, are in a playoff spot right now. Nashville was in the postseason last year. The Rangers have a really tough road ahead of them. They are injured. They are not playing well. It can get off the tracks here very, very quickly. That'll do it for this Friday happy hour evaluation of Keandre Miller. I hope everyone has a safe and fun weekend. Hopefully they beat the Kings so we don't have to do the miserable thing over the weekend. I would like to have a good episode of the show on Monday with Andrew. I'll talk to you guys then, unless something else happens. If there's another trade, if there's a waiver claim, you'll get a video of me at a bar somewhere standing in a corner with a ring light. I'll talk to you guys then. Everyone